my name is Chris Bergh from DataKitchen, and we're going to be starting the webinar now. Um, and so what we're going to do today is kind of go through some slides talking about how to do data ops and a pharmaceutical launch. And so on the left side of your screen, you should see a button. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, just feel free. You can use the chat window. And so what I'm going to do is just walk through some slides and talk about a pharmaceutical launch. So my name is Chris Bergh. I'm head chef of a company called DataKitchen, if you don't know us. And we're going to have three topics today. The first thing that we're going to talk about is what are the characteristics of a pharmaceutical launch success. So we'll talk a little bit about the industry and what we think is meaningful for someone to do analytics for a pharma launch. We're going to talk about why data ops is essential for that, and then we'll give a case study of the work that we've done with Celgene. So the first bit of information on a pharmaceutical product is that pharma companies spend a lot of money, billions of dollars, to discover a product and bring it through the multiple phases of clinical trials. So the first 6 to 12 months of that launch are actually key to realizing a return on that product. And so if you look at that graph on the left, it's actually the rate of growth of that blue line that determines really the success of the product for its life cycle, because it has a patent expiration date. Sort of the area under that blue line is sort of the amount of return that they can create. And so how fast a product grows, how many prescribers write, the penetration of each prescriber, the productivity of each prescriber during that is actually really essential to its launch. And so analytics is a really big part of what makes a pharmaceutical launch effective, both during the pre-launch planning phase and during the first 6 to 9 months of the actual launch. And pharmaceutical data just comes from a lot of different sources. For a lot of companies, their main data source is a company called IMS or a company called Symphony Health. They aggregate data from a bunch of different sources, including pharmacies, as well as their internal systems like Viva or Salesforce. And sometimes there are other sources of information around claims, around real-world evidence data, and a whole bunch of random files that they use. And that data can come from internal systems, it can come from spreadsheets all over the place. And so typically there are dozens of different data sources that need to be integrated together so the pharma team can make decisions around prescribers and payers, etc. And the analytic team, who's working with usually the brand team in the field, the sales reps, they have a lot of ongoing deliverables. There's usually a kind of a weekly launch tracker that's sometimes in PowerPoint, sometimes in a more interactive medium that tracks the launch. They do ad hoc answers to business questions. They do resource allocation, predictive models, etc. And really the analytic team is trying to look for a way to provide their value to the entire brand, because the questions come fast and furious during the launch. And so let's say you're in charge of an analytic team for a launch. What does it take to be a success in this environment where really the company is looking for you and your team to provide valuable insights to drive the success of a product they've spent almost billions of dollars to bring the market forward? And so we at DataKitchen kind of believe in the idea that you should, as an analytic team leader, you should control your destiny. And there's a notion of span of control, so things that you can affect change on to make sure that you're a successful leader of an analytic team. And we think under the span of control should be as much data as you have, an analytic database, the people who are doing the work, the tools, and the process to deliver the values to your customer. Because in this diagram, on the left-hand side are data sources, IT systems. On the top is you as an analytic leader, and on the right are all your customers. They might be hundreds of reps in the field. They may be ahead of the brand team, or all the way up to the CEO who's looking at your charts to report the progress of the launch to Wall Street. And we think at DataKitchen, your span of control should really include 5 major components, and I'm going to go through these in a few slides. The first is that you've got to manage your team, and we believe in an agile process to do that, an iterative, feedback-focused process. On the left, there's actually, you need sort of people who do data work. You need data engineers, their tools, and a database for them to work. And on the right next to that, you need data analysts who really need to work with your customers to understand the data and get insight. And bridging both those is a DataOps technology platform. And DataOps is a new term, and we'll talk about that. And then finally, you need data operations. You need people to do the ongoing day-to-day production and stewardship of the data. So I'm going to walk through each one. So the first one is a data analyst team. And so their goal is really to work day-to-day with autonomy and speed. They need to focus on satisfying their customers, and their customers could be in the brand or in the field. And they need to continually delivering insight to the business. And it becomes a torrent of questions that are asked on, what's happening with my brand, what territories are going weak, what territories are strong, should we do direct-to-consumer advertising, should we hire more sales reps, should we fire more sales reps. There's just a lot of what-if questions that they need to answer during the launch phase. And they need that ability to answer those questions in kind of days and hours. And we believe that there's a lot of tools out there to promote self-service, like Tableau and Alteryx, and that's the case that Celgene used. But there's other tools that you can use to do visualization and some end-user data prep. And if they have been doing some work and trying things out, they also need to promote that investigative work, the things that they've done in a one-off, into a production deliverables. And so, the number one thing that we think is we need to make your data analytics team super powered. And the second thing that they need is those data analyst team need a database that they can trust and a database that they can control. And it also has to be integrated. So your physician data across all those different data sets need to be linked together. Your payer data need together, your product data together. There's dozens of different satellites of data. And in the case of Celgene, we ended up linking over 50 different data sets together. And you also need data engineers who are kind of both customer focused and know pharma data. And really the goals of that data team are fast changes, high quality, and also to work with the company's IT system to be able to bring kind of logic and ideas back from and to their corporate IT systems. The third thing that they need is Agile project management. And that's the ability to kind of keep track of tasks and tickets and show value. It's a way to not write a lot of specs, but actually work from what are called user stories and be able to take those user stories and turn those into either charts and graphs or features in the database or a predictive model quickly, and also reflect on your process. And so there's a lot of books about how to run a project in Agile, but this is, we think it's essential for both the data analytic team and the data engineering team. And the fourth thing that you need is a DataOps technology platform. And that's something that really provides the technical environment for you to do Agile within data analytics. And the real goal of having that is to be able to deliver insight fast with high quality using the tools that you already own. And the real point is that you can continuously show value to the business customers. And that's really what it comes down to for an analytics leader. Your career is on the line in supporting a product launch. And finally, the last thing is sort of the day-to-day data operations. Since people are looking at your product launch tracker on a weekly basis, looking at reports on a day, the velocity at which you can take data from its source and deliver it into production is really important. It's measured in hours, not weeks or days. And you need to also work with your data suppliers in case something's wrong. You need to work on data break fix. You need to have alerts and resolution and data and just the day-to-day patching and workarounds on a normal production environment. And so from our capabilities and what we did for Celgene is that uniquely we have a software product that does data ops, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We supply data engineers in a cloud environment for the work in, but DataKitchen did not do the data analyst or their tools. The customer had their own data analysts and worked embedded in their environment. I think that's the right way to work. We did Agile team management and coaching, and we actually did ongoing data operations. So why is data ops essential, and then what is data ops? So in a launch, it actually, this I think happens in every analytic project, but there are business people on the right, your business customers, who are asking questions. And in order to get those questions answered, you need to make have something happen in analytics, integrate data, change the data, do a visualization, do a predictive model, and that may involve a data analyst, a data engineer, or usually some work of all three. And that also may mean some new data sets being produced. And so all that value is delivered back in terms of charts and graphs and dashboards. And it's really an iterative process. It's a river of questions. Your business customers, once they get a sense of analytics, there's all sorts of what if and follow-up questions that happen. And so that cycle, that iterative cycle, is really important in a product launch. In fact, it's important in every analytic project. And one of the things that's also important is it's hard for business users to get in advance what it is they want. You know, there's two laws. One is Humphrey's law, that the user will never know what they want until the system's in production. It is until they see it and touch it. And then really, if you want to specify it, it's hard to specify in analytics. And as a result, a lot of data analytic projects are failing. 50% of them are according to Gartner. They either fail in terms of their scope or their delivery time. And when a company has spent several $billion on bringing a product to market, in some ways failure is not an option for a pharmaceutical launch. And so how to meet this opportunity? Well, we think, first of all, at the highest level, it begins with thinking about your analytic process differently. It's sort of a mindset change to data ops. And so on the left is where we think a lot of teams are right now. The change of requirements, change of database, change of reports is a fear-inducing process. And a lot of operations, whether they're moving data or changing data, are really done manually. Quality in terms of measuring data, measuring output, is kind of on a hope instead of integrated. There's a hero mentality where people are working late nights. There's also a hope that they could buy you know, one tool will solve everything, and as a result, there's vendor lock-in. And what we'd like to do is have people work in a mindset where they can have lots of changes, where operations are automated, where quality is built in, where they're thinking about building a repeatable process that replaces heroism with people focusing on their most valued work. And as a result, we have a very sort of code-centric, in addition to data-centric, view of how to do this. And so what do we mean by data ops? Well, we actually have we're going to show you a few slides. The first part of data ops is really thinking of your analytic process as a manufacturing line, where all those data sets that are involved in a launch, whether they be subnational IMS data or Viva data, come in on a weekly basis, a daily basis, an hourly basis, and they go through a series of steps. And those steps sometimes involve different code in different languages. There may be an ETL that's done in SQL or your favorite ETL tool. There may be some script code. There may be a predictive model that's done in R or in Python, and there may be a Tableau workbook. But this is as data moves from the left of this value pipeline through production and being delivered out on the right to the customer. Think of it like what Toyota does when they're assembling bits and pieces as they go along. It really is a production line that needs to be monitored and improved for quality of all the artifacts, the data, and the charts and graphs that are delivered. And opposite of that is really analytics is less like a manufacturing line, but it's also an idea business where you're trying to get new ideas and new innovations to answer your customers' business questions into production. And so if they have a question about, well, why is it that my sales are declining in Texas? There could be many reasons for that. And what an analytic team needs is the freedom to try out different things and then be able to quickly take those things that work and put them from development into production. And underlying both of those is really the fact that that production line, that value pipeline, and that innovation pipeline have to happen simultaneously. So you need to both run the production line and change the production line on a daily, hourly, weekly basis and not have anything break. And so data ops allows you to work without both fear or heroism by focus on both orchestrating and deployment while automating and monitoring quality. And so we have a software platform, and that takes these two ideas, the value pipeline and the innovation pipeline, and monitoring and measuring quality, and breaks that into a series of metaphors. One is a kitchen, or is a place that you do the work. Another one is a series of recipes and tests. Ingredients are reusable pieces and orders. And for Celgene, our data engineers and data ops engineers use that technology platform to be able to deliver the quick, innovative value. And so kind of ending what DataKitchen does is we have a data ops software platform. It's both for data engineers, scientists, and analysts to orchestrate that pipeline of data to customer value, to deploy ideas into production, and automate and monitor quality. And we also have a solution that uses that data ops software along with integrating customer data, building the database, allows managers to control their destiny, and it works in a great build, operate, train, transfer mode where we can build it and then transfer it to people if inside the company if that's what they wish. So let's go through the case study and stop the setup right now. So how does this work, this case study? So let's first start with the end in mind. So what Celgene did is that it started off with supporting a brand team launch, and there was really one data engineer kind of supporting 12 data analysts, making kind of 12 schema or data changes a week to a cloud data warehouse in Redshift without breaking anything. And usually that's actually, in most companies, that ratio is reversed. There's 12 data engineers supporting one data analyst, making one changes a week, if not longer. And some companies take months to take one change from their development warehouse and put it into production. And that data analyst, who is backed up by the data engineers, supporting hundreds of salespeople and internal marketing people. And they need to make visualization changes and publish them on the next day. And the result is that there were 1,500 charts or dashboards after about a year that were updated every week by a small team of people. So how does that efficiency happen? How was this able to work and not have just complete and utter chaos? And so let's talk about the roles in this project. So on the left-hand side, there's a data engineer who's actually integrating all those data sets, building a series of interlinked star schemas, using our data ops platform to do that work on a cloud Redshift database. On the right-hand side, there are teams who are embedded at the customer side. They are data analyst roles or the data scientist roles, and they're working directly with the customers, and they're delivering insights with mainly with Alteryx and Excel, and also to a certain extent using using Tableau. And finally, there's a data ops engineer at DataKitchen, kind of overseeing the day-to-day production of the data. And so the important thing here is really to have what we call a superpower mindset. And so in that case, it's really about who is your customer and how are you, and the joy and idea of making them successful. So for the data analytic team who was at Celgene, it was really about their customer, the business user, the salesperson. They wanted to look good. They wanted to deliver value. They wanted to answer and deliver insight to the business question, for the business questions that the customer has. And for the data engineering team, it was really about making the data analysts themselves successful. And so that mindset of focusing on knowing who your customer is, focusing on making them successful, is a key part of making a project like this work. And if you look at it from a timing perspective, these different teams have different deliverable cycles. So the data analyst team really lives in more of a daily, hourly cycle. They're sitting in meetings with customers, trying to answer questions, using mainly Tableau or Excel to kind of turn things around quickly. And that's great because the customers are able to there's this idea of train of thought analytics, or trying to work through all the questions that their business customers have. The data engineers on the other side have more of a weekly cycle, because that's the pattern at which the data came in. But every week there was a production build based on the weekly audit of data that they got, as well as integrating all the other data sets. And it wasn't entirely true. There were some data sets that are also updated daily, but in general, the data engineers operate on a weekly cycle, whereas the data analytic team operates on a daily or hourly cycle. And so from managing the project, both of the teams, first the data engineer started off using a tool called Jira, which is an Agile project management tool, and using a Confluence, which is a wiki. And then the data analyst team actually picked up using Jira and using tickets. and working in an agile way. And both of those actually provide a lot of benefits by having a common system that each people can see what they're working on. It provides a great number of reports, which we won't show, that provide kind of what each team is working on, what the value are for their customers, and how to prioritize each. And so, Jira is a great tool. There's other agile project management tools, but this is the one that we use for the project. And in terms of technical tools, the data engineers were building a database in Amazon using Amazon Web Services, S3, EC2, Redshift. And the data analysts, like I said, were using Tableau Desktop. They were publishing to Tableau Online and using Alteryx and Excel. And underneath all those was the DataKitchen DataOps software platform. And so let's go through an example of how this works. So given that there's a new business question that requires a new data set, what do you do? So you're a month into a launch. There's something going on in Texas. And so the thought is that you need to try to integrate a claims data set to look at if it's a payer problem. So how do you do that? How do you integrate a new data set, keep things moving, and allow people to ask questions and figure out how to link that data set with the other data set, because it may come from a different provider. How did we do that? So the first thing is that we would do is make something called a scrappy star, and we called it scrappy because scrappy is an interesting word because it's both got the word crap in, meaning it's low quality, and it's scrappy, and we do that very quickly in a data mart, and then we expose that to the analysts kind of within a week. And so the analysts knew that that wasn't the most perfect representation of the data. It didn't have all the data quality and monitoring checks that we usually put in. But they would be able to get feedback on it and start using it quickly. And then we would iterate through it during several agile sprints, adding tests, improving the quantity, and getting feedback from the analyst, which allowed them to get feedback from their customer. And so sometimes this would happen within the same database. Sometimes it would happen in a parallel database that would not interfere with the normal production. So the data engineering team would make the scrappy star and iterate. So likewise, the data analytic team would make scrappy dashboards. They would take that first version of the dashboard and play around with it, make sure the first version made any sense, and then start showing early dashboards to the users with the caveat that this data isn't 100% validated. And then have a lot of active sort of build and design sessions with the customer using Tableau to be able to kind of prototype and actually develop the dashboards live. And so the team was very focused on trying to get things 70% done, where it wasn't perfect, it wasn't 100%, but getting feedback first. And that's really the agile way, is get something in front of your customer, excuse me, so that they can give you feedback early. And that goes to my latter point about Zipf's law. It's really hard to, and Humphrey's law, it's hard to know what your customers want without them touching and feeling it. And so both these processes work together, the scrappy dashboard and the scrappy star. And if you look at that graph on the right, that looks like it looks like a graph, but it also shows the kind of increase in quality and sort of decrease in error rate that happens. And so over time, as this dashboard is improved and integrated and tested more, the quality of the dashboard improves, the number of automated tests increase week to week, and you're getting asymptotically closer to the idea of what you want. And that's part of the agile process. And so there's let's give me another example where there's a new business question that requires an Excel file. Now again, the whole point of supporting a product launch in pharma is to be able to give quick insight. And so the analytic team started to once they started to use Tableau, found this desktop tool called Alteryx, which allows them to do some light data integration and blending, and at their desktop. And so they were able to then start doing a little bit of the data role. And of course, they don't want to do the data engineering role altogether, but they could prototype, they could try it out, they could gauge adoption. And a number of times when they found a Alteryx data flow that worked for them, they could say, oh, we don't want to put this into production anymore. DataKitchen, could you actually put this into the database? And so why is that a good thing? Well, what's good is they were able to answer the business question. They were able to work with the data directly. They were able to decide what's a requirement, what's not a requirement, and they were able to focus on their job of doing data analytics. And then when they don't want to be data engineers, they don't want to do data operations, they were able to push that back, and then we were able to integrate that Alteryx script as requirements to the data engineering team. And so there's that flow from the customer to the data analytic team to the data engineering team, and in fact back to the people who provide the data that has to be maintained for success in a product launch. And so the third example, the number of customers drops from 100 to 900, and some field staff wonder what happened. And if those of you who've been part of a pharma launch know that, that could be for a number of reasons. It could be because the address is wrong, the zip code is wrong on a prescriber, something happened in terms of the sales territory alignment, something happened in terms of the provider data. But this is usually a big deal because if a sales manager gets his number of customers dropped, that means he won't get his bonus, and then they get, since they're salespeople, they tend to be very loud and vocal. And this is not an uncommon occurrence. So what do you do when the number of customers drops in a territory from 1,000 to 900? Well, it becomes an investigation. You need to go in and find out why that happened, and why it was, first of all, why it didn't happen, and why it was not detected in that assembly line that we built. And so in this case, it's the root causes, and it's an issue with the production of the supplier. For instance, IMS made an error in their address file. So the real issue is that it wasn't detected. So the test was for 800 or fewer customers. So what we do is try to fail forward and improve the test to be based on not done on a hard number like 800, but on a 5% variation from the last number of customers. And so that's a key thing in moving fast, is that you need to have automated tests. Those tests need to happen very early in the production cycle. And when the tests don't catch it, you need to fail forward and put another test in. So if it doesn't happen, you'll improve it next time. And so underlying part of all of what we've done in the success is really a heavy emphasis on automation, on test automation, deployment automation, orchestration automation, and that's what our DataOps tool is made for. And the fourth example, supplier wants to change the projection method for data. So, and this is an interesting case. So the Symphony and IMS get data from a whole bunch of different sources, but it's not completely accurate. So they get 80%, and then they project, i.e. they do a mathematical formula to cover the rest of the data that they don't provide from all the pharmacies or the providers in the US. And so sometimes that projection may be right, and they want to look at a different projection method. They want to try one that may have some different math behind it. So how do you do that when you're having a product launch? How do you change basically the fundamental data set that you're using to run your business or run your launch? The key here is really to be able to run parallel versions of that data set in production that are exactly the same. So create a parallel production environment, and this is why the cloud is, in my mind, really good. It's not that it's both expandable and flexible, and we were able to create basically copies, full production copies of what happens in production. So a Redshift 1 where that had 1,000 users on, and then a Redshift 2 that had maybe 1 or 2 users on. And the analyst could look at that new projection with all the same business rules, all the same logic applied. And then we had basically 2 versions of the production warehouse in production. And then we were able to balance between the two, saying, well, what is it? Did the supplier did their projection method change, and did the number of prescribers go up? Did their volume change, et cetera? And then we basically ran that in parallel for several weeks on the data engineering side. And on the data analytics team side, they were able to take the fact that they had their normal production database, and that would go along. And then they were able also to take all their reports and sort of point them at the parallel database, and be able to, just by changing the name of the database, they were able to look and then investigate, does this data make sense from their view of the business? And this could go on. Feedback could go to the supplier. Both databases and reports are running, and then at some point, it can be determined that this new projection methodology is superior to the old, and you can switch back from removing the first database and keep the version of database 2 in production. And this, due to our DataOps technology, this is a very trivial parameterization of the process that we were able to do, and basically point one process to build a database with one data set and point on the same process with a different data set at another database. And this flexibility gives not only the flexibility to move fast, it gives you the flexibility to judge things in parallel, but also gives you the confidence that when you ship over, there will be no surprises. So to finish up, DataKitchen has a number of solutions. The one that we're talking about today is the customer data platform that use DataOps. We have other ones for people who want to move their code from development into production, one for people who want to work in the cloud, and other ones for data science teams. And so finally, our executive summary is that DataKitchen is a company that has a DataOps software platform for data engineers, scientists, or analysts to orchestrate data to customer value, deploy ideas into production, and automate and monitor in quality. And we have a customer data platform solution that allows you to integrate all the customer data. We can build it, operate, and train and transfer it to your internal team. It allows you to control your destiny, and we provide through that our DataOps software and data engineering and operations and services. So that's the end of our webinar. I'd like to leave it open to the audience to see if there's any questions. All right, great. Well, thanks. Thanks for your time. If you want more information, all you've got to do is go either to me. My name is Chris. Send an email to me at chrisbergh@datakitchen.io. We're a big believer in DataOps, and our office is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so you can look at our DataOps manifesto and learn about what that means. We also blog quite frequently on DataOps subjects and pharmaceutical launches and other industries, or you can follow our hashtag on Twitter. Thank you much, and have a great day.